Jetpac, my first ever home computer game experience, and it was a very strong start for a machine with only 16K of memory. Hello and welcome to this retrospective tribute to the 1983 8-bit home computer game Jetpac, and to the treasured memories we have of the first computer and video games we ever played and owned as children and teens in the 1970s and 80s. I'm RetroSteve UK, and in this video we'll be taking a close look at Jetpac itself, which was the very first home computer game I ever played, as well as sharing our experiences of what it was like to play video games for the first time in an exciting technological era that was only just beginning to emerge. I'll be briefly sharing my own experiences, and we have some of your featured comments to look at later on in the video, so stay tuned for that. Now, whether it was Jetpac that brought you here, or maybe the Dixon's logo in the thumbnail, all will be revealed as we continue, but before we kick off with a little Jetpac action, remember you're welcome to skip around to different parts of the video if necessary by using the chapter markers that I've placed along the video timeline. For anyone who's not aware, Jetpac is an 8-bit home computer game released for the ZX Spectrum in 1983 by British software company Ultimate Play the Game, and was available for the princely sum of £5.95p. It was also made available on the Commodore VIC-20 and the BBC microcomputers at the time. What makes this game particularly special is the fact that at a time when the ZX Spectrum was only just becoming popular, the programmers managed to create a fun, graphically impressive and technically sophisticated game on a machine that had just 16 kilobytes of memory. To put that in context, the laptop I currently use for video editing and gaming has a memory of 33.5 million kilobytes, which would be like owning 2,097,152 ZX Spectrums. Jetpac as a game consists of you as the jetpack wearing spaceman flying around a planet's surface, initially collecting and rebuilding the 3 sections of your crashed spaceship. You then collect the purple fuel pods as they appear on the screen and drop them into your ship. While this is happening, you have to avoid the enemy objects flying around the screen, asteroids in the first level, or shoot them for points. You also have the option of collecting bonus items like gold bars and gems for extra points. Gameplay is silky smooth, the sound is impressive for a one-channel beeper, and the controls are responsive. Up on the joystick makes Jetman fly up with a satisfying amount of inertia, while holding down causes him to hover. Left and right are self-explanatory, and the fire button shoots out a satisfying stream of laser gunfire that rips through enemy objects like a chainsaw through jelly. The game area wraps around, so if you or an enemy object exit one side of the screen, you'll re-emerge on the other, and when you've finally filled your spaceship with fuel, you can enter the ship to fly off to the next planet where you'll have to face a new type of enemy. There is a storyline to this simple gameplay, believe it or not, and it's explained in the inlay card of the original Spectrum cassette game. You can pause the video here to get the full story, but the potted version is that your Jetman is a test pilot delivering spaceship kits to different planets and trying to get rich along the way by gathering as much planetary loot as possible. After the simple asteroids of stage 1, things get a little trickier with bouncing alien fuzzballs to contend with, although you won't have to build your ship this time. Stage 3 introduces pulsating sticky bubbles. In stage 4, you're attacked by dart-like spaceships that hover at the side of the screen until they detect you, then home in for the kill. Stage 5 introduces a new ship to build, so we have to put the pieces together again, before being attacked by hovering UFOs that home in on you immediately and follow you around the screen. We're also kindly awarded an extra life along with the new ship. The next stage provides a bit of a breather, with some plus-sign shaped aliens that sedately float around in random directions and are relatively easy to dispatch. Stage 7 is the easiest so far. The alien fighter ships on this level just drift across the screen until they hit something, and you can avoid them by simply camping out on the top platform, waiting for the fuel to arrive. We get cute little owl-like creatures on the 8th stage. These guys are intent on following you, but they're not too smart, as they'll just hang around under the platform that you're standing on if you don't move from the spot, and they can be easily led around as you pick up the fuel pods. We lose another ship here, and on stage 9 we'll have to build yet another one, a stylish looking rocket ship. Also, I think this is where we hit the limits of the 16K memory, as the aliens on this level are the asteroids again from stage 1. After this, the stages repeat as they did from the beginning, but with the new style of ship, until stage 13 when we see our 4th and final ship design, a futuristic dart-like rocket that looks like it might just get us home, but alas no. After 16 levels, we're returned back to stage 1 with the asteroids and the 3 pieces of the original ship, and the game goes on. So ultimately, Jetpac is a score attack game that tests our skills and endurance and rewards us with points, and the ultimate aim is to try to smash our own personal high scores or the scores of our friends. There were quite a few magazine reviews of Jetpac at the time of release, and they were all very positive, praising the graphics, sound and the simple but addictive gameplay. For this video I've picked out 2 of these examples with pages from the Sinclair User magazine, sourced from the World of Spectrum magazine archive, which is linked in the description. First up is Sinclair User issue 24 from March 1984, which mentions Jetpac in an article about games that were released on cartridge for a ZX Spectrum interface, which was short-lived due to the fact that it only supported 16K games and not the more popular 48K games that superseded the 16K model of Spectrum. Looking back at Jetpac, which had been released 10 months earlier, they said,
"Jetpac was the first game Ultimate produced for the Spectrum. In it you play a spaceman whose task is to deliver and assemble spaceship kits and to collect valuable treasures along the way. You will be faced with all kinds of odd creatures which you must avoid and destroy to complete your task."
Almost 4 years later, in December 1987, Sinclair User is reviewing the £1.99 re-release from Ricochet Software. They describe Jetpac as being from the dawn of time, even though it had only been 5 years since its first release. According to the reviewer, Jason Roseman, it's an ancient shoot 'em up without much gameplay, but it still retains some of its original addictiveness. Jetpac was the first ever proper home computer game I played back in 1983, and I'm not going to count the comparatively boring Binatone TV tennis machine that we had in the late 70s. I was able to try out Jetpac when my sister's boyfriend brought his Spectrum round to our house to show it off. I was wowed by the slick looking graphics, fun arcade action and explosive sound effects, and I think my parents must have been wowed too because there was a Sinclair Spectrum nestled under the Christmas tree later that year. They bought the machine from Dixon's, home electronics shop in our town, and Dixon's were giving away a software bundle that included Armageddon, Horoscope Skiing, Hunchback, Kong, Mr. Wimpy, Checkered Flag, Scrabble, Chess, Make a Chip and Survival. Also included was that ubiquitous Horizons demo cassette that came with every Spectrum. I've got one right here on the shelf, look. And ironically, the breakout clone Through the Wall from that Horizons tape was the one game that both my parents ended up playing over and over. Sadly, Dixon's did not include Jetpac in their bundle, and my parents understandably thought the free games were enough to be getting on with, but my sister's boyfriend was able to provide me with an unofficial copy on a blank cassette, as was often the case back then. So that was the game that ended up getting the most playtime on my brand new pride and joy, the rubber-keyed 48K Spectrum home computer. There are many ways to play Jetpac today in 2025, although some are more accessible than others. Perhaps the most challenging way, and you'll need the right gear for this, is to load the game from a cassette into original hardware. You could also load a Jetpac ROM file into a modern recreated Sinclair Spectrum like the Spectrum Next or the Spectrum from Retro Games Limited. Emulation is also an option which will allow you to run the original game from a ROM file on your computer or mobile device. Some of the simpler emulators are free, but for the best features, I'd recommend Spectaculator. It's free to try out for 30 days and I've been using it for years with great results. If however you're looking for an instant gratification, there are a handful of online sites that have versions of Jetpac you can play in an internet browser. The best of these, in my opinion, with a one-for-one emulated version of the ZX Spectrum game, is on the Internet Archive. You'll need to use keyboard controls to play it, and these aren't explained, so I've popped the keyboard instructions in this video's description for you to refer to underneath the links to Spectaculator and the Internet Archive. Having early memories of being wowed by computer games running on our home TVs is a fairly common experience, so I reached out on social media for your thoughts and memories, and here's what some of you had to say. Over on my Facebook page, John McLennan Parish had Jetpac on his BBC Micro B, as well as Repton and Elite. All good games, but the loading times and tape errors were torture. You sometimes had to rewind the cassette and start the loading process all over again. Annoying, but so worth it in the end. On Bluesky Social, Snuggsy187 only ever played Jetpac around his Spectrum-owning friend's house, and it was amazing for a 16K game. Snuggsy had an Acorn Electron which never had a version of Jetpac. However, it does now, 40 years later, as he's written a version for the Acorn himself. You can see this running in the video on screen right now, and it can be freely downloaded from his GitHub page, which is linked in the description. Quasar reminds us that Jetpac was one of the 10 games released on ROM cartridges for the ZX Spectrum. This was a failed format that was available from 1983 to 84. In 2019, Quasar released an interface for the vintage Sam Coupe computer that allows it to use those Sinclair ROM carts, and it's fun to use one computer's cartridges on another machine. Aid had Jetpac on the BBC Micro along with a sibling. They got to choose a game each, and between them, Aid chose Sabrewolf. Aid loved Jetpac much more than Sabrewolf though. Before getting the BBC Micro, their first gaming experience was one of those TV tennis Pong machines, the Radafin Telesport 4. Cleo remembers her dad getting Pong, then upgrading to a Commodore 64. She and her brother would spend ages playing Jack Attack, and they also had Manic Death Chase, but the cassette artwork used to freak her out too much to try playing it. It also took ages to load, so there's that. Cleo also mentions Granny's Garden on the BBC Micro, which many of us will remember playing on computers at school in the 1980s. From the community post section of my YouTube channel, Paul Osborne at Ukar69 loved Jetpac's simple and addictive gameplay. His first computer was a Spectrum, which was a Christmas present around 1983. He has memories of playing Manic Miner, Checkered Flag, Ant Attack and loads of others. Paul still has his Spectrum, which was upgraded to a Spectrum Plus using a conversion kit, and it's stored away in his garage loft along with the rest of his computer collection. Graham Marston's dad brought home a Sharp MZ80K, as he thought it was more sensible than a Commodore 64 or Spectrum with its built-in screen, tape deck and lack of hideous wires. Unfortunately, it lacked any popular games, and the games it did have were all in black and white. To his dad's credit, the thought was there, and following the same logic he ended up buying Amstrad computers for their neatness and tidiness. Gary Lawless's first computer was a Sinclair ZX81 with 3D Monster Maze, and Croaker Crawler, which was a simple Frogger game. His favourite though was Adventure, which was a brilliant fantasy text adventure from Sinclair. Gary also remembers trying his hand at programming in Sinclair Basic by following the instructions in the ZX81 instruction manual. And finally, Bretsky777's first ever interaction with a home computer was playing Jetpac. It was around 1984 on his mate's VIC-20 and it was life-changing. He'd already seen Missile Command on an arcade machine at the local swimming baths, but had never seen any games on a home micro. Bretsky was blown away by seeing this arcade game running on a TV, and he knew it was the future. He didn't get his own computer until Christmas 1985, an Acorn Electron, so until then he played games on the demo machines in his computer shop and enthusiastically read issues of Computer and Video Games magazine. Bretsky has been an avid collector of home micros ever since, and those days were truly a great time to be a youngster. If you'd like to share your memories of Jetpac or of your own earliest gaming memories, head for the comment section and we can have a chat there. And if you want to be featured in a future retrospectives video, follow me on my various social media platforms where I'll be asking for your comments whenever I'm working on something new. You'll find all the links in the video description. Well, that's all I have for you for now, so until the next video, I'd like to thank everyone who shared their comments, to thank you for liking and subscribing, and of course to thank you all for watching Retrospectives.